Hi, everybody, and welcome to this edition of Macro Pro and Friends. Today, I'm joined by Mandy Farquhar. Mandy and I were recently at the national conference, and we really saw some new things there. Mandy, would you share with people one of the things that you thought was really helpful in claims?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Nationals this year was great. There's so many new companies that I got to meet. Around data analytics is a big topic in our industry at this time. I wish I knew these services or had these services when I was an adjuster. They're able to predict reserves now. They're able to predict data, claim outcomes, doctors, and much more. It was really nice to get out to see people and, meet these new companies.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the ones that I thought was fascinating, and we're going to have here on one of our webinars, is a company by the name of North Star Care. And they are a group that helps people with alcoholism. A lot of times employers have programs to help their employees with drug abuse and alcoholism, and they have something completely out of the box. It's half the cost of traditional rehab. It's a year-long program, and it's really innovative. So, I'm looking forward to sharing that information with everybody. So, Mandy, I'm going to get to a bit of housekeeping here, and then you can introduce our speakers. So, first of all, today's program is worth one California CEU credit. You must be logged on to the GoToWebinar platform, so make sure you're not just phoning in, but you're also online so they can track your time and attendance. There are handouts for today's program, so make sure that you download that. If you have any questions, please make sure you put it in the question box, and we'll be sure to ask that of our expert. And if you'd like to see this program again, it will be on the Macro Pro YouTube page. There are a lot of programs there now, so if you need some information, I'm sure that Macro Pro YouTube page has something that can help you out. All right, Mandy, who do we have with us today?
Today, I would love to introduce a friend and colleague, Jennifer Moreland. She has been in the industry. Hi, Jennifer. She has been in the industry for over 18 years, specializing in ancillary and claims investigation. She really excels in her leadership, new business development, and is always forming new, long-lasting relationships. She's also a mother of two twins that I adore so much. Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your role with WatchPoint?
Sure, thanks, Mandy. Hi, everyone. My name is Jennifer Moreland, and I work with WatchPoint in their business development department. I'm here and happy to serve any needs that you have to get you the best investigation services and outcomes as possible. I'm always on my phone or can be reached by email to address all your needs and make sure that your dollars are well spent. A little bit about WatchPoint is a national private investigations and SIU designate firm, and they specialize in both field investigations such as surveillance, scene investigations, and digital intelligence such as internet and social media investigations, backgrounds, and even jury trial intelligence. In fact, they are a trusted partner of the U.S. Department of Justice for federal trials, which I think is pretty cool. And here to speak with us today is our Vice President, Terry Bowling, who, as you can see below, has 20 years of insurance investigative experience and has spent a decade and a half in SIU and over a decade in social media. So hope you all enjoy. And Terry, I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Jennifer, and big thanks to Diane and Mandy. Now, I just turned on my webcam and it is showing me that I can't see myself. Can you guys see me, Diane, Mandy?
We cannot see you.
Let me turn it off and back on again.
This is live, right? This is what happens.
Yeah, it was working earlier and now it's just a black screen. Light says that it's on, but I am not on the screen.
Well, that's unfortunate, but hopefully it'll turn on while you're doing your presentation. Would you like to try turning it off and on one more time?
Yeah, I will try one more time. So there is off. And the light came back on. And I still don't see myself.
Oh my goodness. So under the microphone button, you've clicked that little camera?
Yeah, I've clicked the camera, the shutter's open, nothing changed since our little meeting beforehand, and now it's just black.
All right. Well, sometimes we just roll with the punches. So Terry, with no further ado,
All right.
get this
So
going.
just to set the stage, if my camera were working, devilishly handsome. If you could see me now, that's what you would see. Just take my word for it. But I appreciate everybody. Appreciate Diane allowing us to be here, and Mandy, and of course my cohort Jennifer for being here and for servicing her her clients, our partners. As discussed, I've spent 22 years in insurance investigations, 23 in insurance, and that constitutes the entirety of my professional career. I've spent a lot of years in CEU and social media investigations. And the last thing you see there, long-suffering Tennessee Vol. It used to say completely unrealistic Tennessee Vols fan, but we're actually pretty good this year, so I'll just say long-suffering because we've been down for a really long time. So during the presentation, just so you guys know, I really like to be interactive, and I really like to answer questions as they come up, because I don't want you to lose the question by the end, or not want to come back to something further into the presentation. So if you want to ask questions, there is a drop down for questions. Mandy will be monitoring that with me as well, and we'll pop in and ask the questions so that the entire group can hear the question and answer. And also, with my thick country bumpkin accent, if there's any words you don't understand or any translation issues, let Mandy know that as well, and we'll try to clarify whatever slang word I just used that nobody actually understood. So with that all said, we'll get started. So there's 7.83 billion people on the planet. I was supposed to pause on that. But anyway, 7.83 billion people on the planet, which used to be a really scary statistic because of how often I had to update that number. But it's actually slowed down in its growth considerably. As you guys probably know, in the last 5 years, that number has begun to shrink, or at least not grow at its prior pace. And the number 5 billion out of that represents the number of people on the internet. In the US, we have over a 93% internet availability for the population of the United States. So certainly here for investigating claims, it's important to understand and know that most people, certainly professionals and the people that we work with on a daily basis that would have claims, et cetera, I would say that number is even higher. So most have an internet footprint. And how we see the world has really changed. This is the great Tiger Woods in 2002, hitting his, if I'm not mistaken, tee shot. And if you notice the crowd, the gallery, everybody's fixed on Tiger. In 2018, everybody's fixed on their phone, which is fixed on Tiger. And that becomes really important when we start talking about things like geotagging and social monitoring and watching profiles and extracting data from photos. The number of photos and videos uploaded on a daily basis is astronomical. And the more individuals use those phones, especially the ones that don't know how to turn certain features off, which most people don't, we start to gather and gain a lot of leverage and a lot of additional benefits in our investigative processes. So going straight into social media, we talk about the various platforms and which platforms are king. You have microblogging sites, photo sharing sites, video sharing sites, and of course the top in all of those, Facebook at 2.8 billion users, Instagram at 1.4 billion users, and YouTube at 2.6 billion users. The most interesting statistic here is one of the last microblogging sites has always been LinkedIn. It's never been in the top numbers, but they have almost doubled their active users in the last 18 months. And that's brought them up to really number 3 or 4, in that social media space, which again it's great for us. But I'll caution when it comes to doing some self some self-investigation at the desktop level as an adjuster. Be aware that some sites allow you to see who's looking and some don't. LinkedIn is one, of course, that tracks users as they look at others' pages, and that individual, that claimant, might be able to see it. Whereas Facebook, you can search all day long and they don't track that data or share it. I say they don't track that data to be aware that there are third-party programs, which are scams, that you'll see pop up from time to time that say, track who's viewing your profile on Facebook. Facebook doesn't track it. There is no third-party program that will show it because it's not tracked data. It's nothing that can be, that can be grabbed. So always be aware something like that is a scam and avoid clicking on it. So it is very good to be king. On Facebook, the average person has 338 friends. I don't have 338 friends in real life, so that's an incredible number to me that people have that many friends on there. Average person visits 14 times in a day. They spend an average of 20 minutes per visit, which is a lot. There are over 90 million fake profiles in 2021. There was almost 3 times that in 2020. Facebook did a really good job of cleaning up some of those fake profiles. 62% of all social logins for other websites and brands are using your Facebook login. So that probably tells you just the amount of data Facebook is able to grab and store when 62% of social logins for other websites and brands run through Facebook. If it were a country, it would be the most populated in the world. And in 2021, they made $114 billion in advertising revenue. My daughter likes to tell me that Facebook is just for old people, but 114 billion, I don't think Facebook really cares who their target audience is, as long as they keep pulling more than 100 billion in revenue. And they're actually up this year, despite a little bit stagnant in the adding active users. They are up in advertising revenue. So some runners up, obviously Twitter and YouTube. YouTube is interesting because there's over 300 hours of video uploaded every minute. So it's one of those things where it would be impossible, to view all of YouTube. But YouTube's also important. Just as a quick sidebar, we actually have a claimant that we closed their claim based on a YouTube channel that we found under a fake name for that individual, and they were conducting activities outside of what they were restricted to do. And we were able to prove the date, the time, everything for the video, and never actually had to do any field investigations at all. Everything was done completely with digital intelligence. So a little trivia question. Feel free to throw this in the questions bar and just see how you fare. So who is the most followed user on Twitter? And as you're formulating your answers, I will tell you the most followed musician is Justin Bieber. So it isn't Justin Bieber. The most followed athlete is Cristiano Ronaldo, but he's not #1 overall. The top business person is Elon Musk, who's actually #3 overall. And Katy Perry is the top female, but #4 overall. Kim Kardashian actually is an answer that gets brought up every single time. She is in the top 25, but actually surprisingly lower in the top 25. But Gwen, I just saw the right answer pop across there when Gwen said Obama. At 133 million followers, not only is Obama #1, he's actually 22 million followers in the lead. So that's a substantial lead. I don't think he's going to get overtaken anytime soon. So elsewhere around the internet, there's some statistics over there that you can see that are kind of, some of those are a little shocking, with 430,000 tweets every 60 seconds, 56,000 photos uploaded every 60 seconds, 95,000 app downloads. It's just, you can see, most apps track geolocation as well, and depending on the app, a lot of people use Google Plus. which doesn't exist as a social media platform anymore, but it still exists for tracking your whereabouts and give you recommendations. And if you don't have location sharing turned off, while people can't see your exact location, they can see your check-ins. And Google Plus will automatically check you in when you walk inside of a restaurant, for example. That can be seen if it's not turned off. So it's pretty interesting how well people can be tracked if you know where to look. But the most interesting thing on this page, I think, is just talking about how disgusting we all are. 7 years, 8 months spent watching TV, 5 years, 4 months on social media, only 1 year, 10 months on grooming, and another 6 months doing laundry. So we spend a heck of a lot more time in our lives watching TV and sitting on social media than we do taking baths and cleaning our clothes. So some Facebook fact or fiction. I cannot see who's viewing my profile. That's true. Facebook doesn't allow tracking of views. They don't track views themselves. And as we discussed, there is no third-party application that allows you to see that. The other big one is false friending. So is false friending illegal? The answer is no. False friending is unethical, but it is not illegal. So what false friending is, to bring you up to speed if you don't already know, although most of you I'm sure do, false friending is creating one of those fake profiles that we talked about on Facebook for the purpose of then becoming a friend with someone whose Facebook profile would be set to private, so you can't see their timelines, you can't see their photos, you can't see the things they're doing, their comments, but by false friending them, you would be opened up to seeing those things. It is something that happens a lot. Fortunately, not so much in our industry, because someone at some point is going to be the case that gets mentioned for false friending. There's eventually going to be a someone versus someone else where this eventually becomes illegal. And I know myself, I think I would speak for everybody here. You don't want to be the name on that docket that was sued for false friending. So while it isn't illegal, it is unethical, in my opinion, but also it's against the terms of service of almost every social media platform. Almost every social media platform does say up front that it is against their terms of service to create fake profiles for the purpose of false friending. So Facebook is absolutely a wealth of information. Everything from the name, birthday, political and religious views, relationship statuses. A fully filled out Facebook profile actually contains 40 pieces of recognizable personal data. That's a lot of information there. And, you know, we talk about how all the places we go to gain information when we're doing an internet deep dive, we call them DIGs, digital intelligence gathering, not a social media check, because we're checking a lot more than social media. Now, having said that, the majority of the information we find does come from these social media sites. So if we're looking at, for example, I know Jennifer mentioned our partnership and contract with the Department of Justice. So we are involved in federal trials. So what we do is go in usually day of or day before jury selection. We go in and take, 172 prospective jurors were for the Michigan governor kidnapping plot. Had 428 prospective jurors for the Pulse nightclub shooting, the trial of the shooter's spouse, North Salmon. So we were the intelligence department for the U.S. Department of Justice on those and a number of other federal trials. Those are just most recognizable. But the majority of the information we find does come from Facebook and other social media sites. So checking those sites can provide a lot of information. Now, there's a lot more to the internet than just social media, but a lot of the base information does come from social media sites, and Facebook asks more questions than anybody. They require a lot more information than anybody else. So it is a really, really good place to go for information. So using all indicators, this goes really to the adjusters as far as when you're sitting and doing, say you're speaking to a claimant or you're taking a statement, you're in a deposition, it's always a really good idea to gather as much of this information as possible. obviously names and nicknames, email addresses. The email prefixes that people use for email addresses are used more than 50% of the time as usernames on other sites. So if myself, for example, UT Vol Fanatic is my old email address that I still have on Yahoo, called UT Vol Fanatic. But if you were to go to eBay to see what I've sold, granted, you would only find Tennessee football tickets, but you could go to eBay, use my email prefix, pull my username, and see everything I've ever bought and sold on eBay. So there are certain things that people use those usernames for, and we have found people down to, bowling leagues using those usernames. Product reviews. We found several claimants doing product reviews on items they've purchased by using those email prefixes, aka their username. Obviously, physical addresses, phone numbers, spouses' names, children's names are always important. Reason being, children are way less guarded with the words they use on social media than adults are. So we've had countless cases, a few that are really funny, but countless cases that the claimant had a private Facebook page, and maybe the spouse had a private Facebook page. The children did not. And the children gave indications of what that claimant might be doing and when. And using digital intelligence to frame physical surveillance is always a good idea to know what's going to happen and when. More information you have, the better. So why outdated is good? If we were all in a big room together, I would ask you to raise your hands if you have a MySpace page. I can tell you from experience, most of you wouldn't raise your hand. But if I said, have you ever had a MySpace page, most of you would. And the simple fact is, if you ever had a MySpace page, you still do. There's no active way to connect to it, but we can get there. And what I find interesting is, while you got cooler and you moved from MySpace onto where the cool kids are going with Facebook, and then on to Instagram and Twitter, it's probably not a new set of friends. It's probably still your same old friends that you had when you were on MySpace. So what we're able to do is, even if you have a lockdown Facebook page, go to the MySpace registries, see who your friends were, search those friends, and find any of them who don't have a private page, so that we can see the interactions between that person and our claimant. So there are certain ways to get around to get to data that would otherwise be hidden. Because the thing about social media is, once it's posted, it never goes away. It will live forever. Maybe there's no active link to get to it, but it still exists. You don't upload a photo, then take it down and it not still be there. It's still there. It's just removed the target on how to get to it. So outdated is good, and we're able to use that in order to formulate a more complete investigation. And this is the main reason. So searching the internet can be compared to dragging a net across the surface of the ocean. While you're probably going to catch a lot, there's a lot that's deeper than that and missed. And the graphic over to the left, you can see surface web, 4%. The surface web is what Google and Bing and Wikipedia, any compilation, any actual search engine is going to be able to search the surface web. You can also use meta engines that search all search engines, but you're still going to miss 96% of what's available on the internet. And again, I go back to, most of what we find is on the surface web, but there are things we find in the deep web and on occasion the dark web that change an investigation completely, change a claim handling completely. Some of that information can be Yahoo Groups postings. So if there's a Yahoo Groups page that you're a part of, that Yahoo Groups doesn't have a direct link that goes to it unless you have it. It's not a public link, but if you know how to search through those databases, we can find Yahoo Groups pages that we're not a part of and see the interaction. One example of that is pretty interesting. We had a case where the claimant was the king. So the claimant was a king in a Renaissance reenacting group. And their group page said when their next event was. So we were able in the deep web to find their next event, communicate with our partner, schedule surveillance, have the investigator go out and video the claimant. I will say the claimant wasn't jousting. They weren't running around doing some of the events, but there was a lot of setup, a lot of video. It was still an incredibly impactful case, but they didn't do some of the things we were really hoping they were going to do when we saw what was happening. So we'll talk a little bit about the dark web and Tor. Tor, if you don't know what it is, it's the onion router. But moving back to the dark web, there's over 200,000 websites. Users remain completely anonymous because you can't get there if you're not. You actually have to be using a specialized router in order to get there. That router masks your IP, masks your location. And the dark web typically is just a place for, black market stores and illicit trading of photographs, unfortunately, and things like that. Again, I've got an 18-year-old daughter, so some of this stuff rings really true to me. But in that case, there's a lot of pornography traded and things like that in the dark web where it can remain anonymous, and people can have that that idea of safety when conducting those activities. I don't know how well coming through on your screens you can actually see the bottom left picture, but Silk Road is basically Amazon for illegal stuff. So if you had the ability to get to the dark web, you could visit Silk Road, which is back up and running now, and buy everything that you see there, from cannabis to ecstasy, opioids, psychedelics, stimulants. And if you keep going down that left-hand side, you can see all of the categories of things you can go to. And if you were able to keep scrolling down, Soldiers of Fortune, you can hire hitmen right off of Silk Road. So there's a lot of illicit, illegal activity that takes place on the dark web. In order to get there, you need something like Tor, or the onion router. It was developed by the U.S. Naval Research Laboratory for protected government communications. Once they were tired of it or rid of it and moved on to something else, pretty much just left it there for people to find and piece together and reuse it. So it's used heavily now as the go-to router for getting to the dark web. As I said, so Silk Road is more of the Amazon of the black market. Actually has a feedback system and product reviews, which is hysterical. And then Bitcoin. Now, I did not, because I completely forgot, I did not update Bitcoin today, so I don't know what Bitcoin is trading at as of this morning. The last time I gave the presentation, I had it up at 32,393.52. I don't know what it is today, because I completely forgot to update that statistic. But if anybody knows, you can throw it in there, and I'll say it out loud. But
well, I'm going to give it to you right now. It is going for $20,612.70 a share.
Excellent. So if those of you that don't know, it actually topped 64,000 in April of last year. So if you had bought when it came out at 275, you made some pretty good money on that. So just because people are generally curious about it, Ross William Albright is the founder of Silk Road. He created it. I do give him credit and props for one thing, and that's use of his alias Dread Pirate Roberts. It's one of the best movies ever made. He had a pretty elaborate business plan to avoid detection and did a really good job, if not for those pesky Yahoo forums. The FBI was monitoring a Yahoo forum for something completely unrelated to Ross Albright and the Silk Road. That's not why they were there. However, something he said led them to say, okay, who's this guy? Because he ties back to a couple of other things that we might be interested in. They were able to tie a lot of those comments into thinking he might have something to do with Silk Road. So they got their subpoenas and they began intercepting his mail. Fake passports, money, loads of documents and things like that were seized. So then they searched the residence. He was arrested in 2013 for the crimes you see there, was sentenced to 2 consecutive life sentences, has surrendered $187 million, but if anybody's interested in a good old-fashioned treasure hunt, there's estimated to be about another 200 million out there that we haven't pieced together yet in cryptocurrency. So it's probably out there somewhere if somebody has the smarts to go out and grab it. I can't help you there. So we do try to use cutting edge technology and stay on the forefront. I know this is in claims handling. It's important to leverage the information you have at your fingertips. Leverage the things that you can in order to create a better claims outcome. One of those pieces of technology is geotagging. Geotagging is the storage and location, storage of location-based data in latitude, longitude. Basically, it tags your photos with geographic location. Like my sister used to take a bunch of Polaroids, pull the picture out, flip it over, and always write when it was taken and who it was taken. Basically, phones do that for you now. Most modern digital cameras also do geolocation, unless you specifically tell the camera not to. Every smartphone does geotagging location on every photo you take on your phone. And it's not just the geotagging, it's actually time of day, latitude, longitude, if your flash went off, the type of phone you're using, which can be beneficial to us as well. There's a lot of data that is stamped on that photo every time you take it. Most people don't realize that it's automatic unless it is disabled through with an iPhone. You actually have to, I think, root your phone to get in there. I don't think you can get in there normally. With Android phones, you can actually turn it off. Vehicle Spotter is another one that deserves a lot of credit. Now, this company started, and what they actually started doing, there's several, but they eventually all kind of banded together and used the same information. But they paid tow trucks, wrecker services, to put the cameras on it. Everybody's probably seen the little Google vehicles that drive around with the 360-degree camera spinning on top. What they did was essentially use the same camera and stuck that on top of wrecker services, which are on the road at all times of day and night. And using the millions of cabs and tow services and everything that they could get their hands on, those cameras began doing one thing, and that's taking a snapshot of vehicle tags and tagging the location of that vehicle. So when we get a new claim, we use Vehicle Spotter. It doesn't cost anything if we don't get a hit. So we throw pretty much every case in there. So if we have the claimant's tag, we'll throw it in there. We actually had a case fairly recently where out of about 8 different times the car was seen in the last, I think it was 60 days, half of those were at a specific gym. So we were able to communicate with the gym, find out that they do have a membership. Weren't able to find out when they go, but had enough information to then communicate with the client to say this might be worthwhile for surveillance. In fact, it was, with video of the claimant inside working out over the course of 3 days of surveillance. So these types of things you start to see. We had another claimant that was living transient and was living in a La Quinta Inn, and we were able to, Vehicle Spotter was able to show him tagged at that La Quinta Inn, and the investigator was able to find him there. So stolen vehicle. I don't know if anyone here is in the property realm, but this case just kind of speaks to using those prefixes that we talked about, using usernames as how someone might identify themselves somewhere else online. So this vehicle was reported stolen. It was recovered a couple of months later. It's completely stripped for parts. I do apologize. It's not the actual photo of the vehicle. I just didn't have it anymore. I couldn't find it. But the parts for that vehicle were located on Craigslist and other public and private marketplace sites. We were able to identify that up to, if I'm not mistaken, it was 14 months before it was reported stolen is when they started selling the parts off of it. Up to about a month after the vehicle was recovered, stripped for parts, the individual was still selling it for parts. So the owner of the vehicle stripped the vehicle bare, dumped it, and for some time sold the parts off of it while claiming a total loss on the vehicle. We were able to find that, and the individual was actually convicted of insurance fraud.
We have a question.
Yeah, shoot.
So the question is, when you say car tags, do you mean license plates?
Yes, the vehicle's registration tag, the license plate. So absolutely, yeah, it's always looking just at taking a snapshot of the license plate of every vehicle that goes by. And you multiply that by about 3 million cars they have on the road with these cameras, it's catching up really quick. When it first started, I would say back in 16, 17, we were using it, and we would get a hit in Atlanta. We would get a hit in LA. Now we get hits in middle of nowhere. So it's definitely come a long way, and now is very, very useful. Early on, it was just something we threw in there, and maybe we get a hit, maybe we wouldn't. These days, we get a hit about 90% of the time. Maybe it's beneficial to the case, maybe it's not. But again, you throw enough of the maybe it's beneficials in there, like looking at the deep web, dark web, vehicle spotter, they start to add up, and one can make or break a claim to go your way. So I think they're all important, and used together, they create a really clear picture of the person's activity. So another not so heavily utilized, at least in my opinion, should be utilized more, is medical canvases. I don't know if this is something you guys do regularly. We do have partners that use them, on most claims. But medical canvases are a really good idea to identify several things, and that's, is the claimant treating like they're supposed to? Was there maybe a pre-existing injury, which we see fairly often? Are they being consistent across who they're seeing and when? And but the big thing, I think, is pre-existing. We get claims that come in on a Monday morning, and as you guys know, that's a first thing on Monday morning case is a red flag of, did they really get hurt over the weekend, or did they get hurt at work this morning? We've had several cases, and I'm sure a lot of you have seen them as well, where claimant comes in on Monday, claims an injury, and we find the boating accident. We find the information on the boating accident or four-wheeler, or those are just ones that I can remember, but various ways they've hurt themselves over the weekend. For me personally, my most famous was jumping a little too exuberantly on a Tennessee away game and going through my coffee table. That was an injury. It happened on the weekend. It didn't happen at work. So had I gone in and made a claim on Monday morning, my daughter making fun of me on social media over it would have been something we would have caught, and I would have probably gotten in trouble for that. So when to assign digital intelligence? Really, first sign of any inconsistency, digital intelligence is inexpensive. So it's a very inexpensive way to understand a little more about what that claimant might be up to. So you find a little bit more about that digital footprint, gather intelligence on an adverse party for legal, jury selection, of course, we talked about, any questionable injury or incident, just to start the building blocks of determining if that claim was legitimate or not. Any third-party claims, always in preparation for litigation, suspicion of physical activity or alternate employment, things that you guys see as red flags, can't ever get a hold of them. They always call you back after 5 o'clock. There's always a lot of noise in the background when they call you. Those red flags that say they might be doing something other than what they're telling you they're doing, which is, sitting on the couch all day. Always prior to surveillance, because an informed investigation is a more complete investigation. So the more information that individual knows about their claimant, the better off they are at being able to gather the proper evidence for you. And always as soon as possible. As soon as possible is because claimants have an innate way of getting a lot smarter about social media inexplicably right as they get representation. Every time a claimant seems to go out and obtain counsel, they seem to get really smart really fast on shutting down all of their social media. So the key there is to grab it ahead of time, because a couple things happen. A, you have it where you wouldn't have been able to find it otherwise. And B, you have a precedent then to gather more data from social media through subpoena. Because what you can show is, okay, so the claimant was talking about, tripping over his dog on the weekend. Then the claimant came in on Monday and filed a claim, and then his tripping over the dog was taken down on Thursday when he got an attorney. By grabbing that early, by doing digital intelligence gathering prior to that coming down, you're showing an active behavior. an active behavior of, oh, I tripped and fell this weekend, I should probably not tell people that. That looks very favorable when you start showing those things, for the claim itself and being able to get a, to have a denial stick, but also just to be able to say, okay, what else is out there? What else is out there that we didn't see? This is clear intent that they're taking information down that might hurt their claim. What else is out there? Facebook is really easy to work with. Instagram, all of these that we work with on a daily basis are really easy to work with. Once you get a subpoena, they send us the box, the box tapes. They send us the file of everything ever written. And it makes it a lot easier to go through and then identify the information and find new information that you might not have seen otherwise. So how to use digital intelligence to frame surveillance? I think it's the most important first step, because there's a lot of things that we're going to see. I've had clients in the past that felt uncomfortable about discussing certain things over the phone. One in particular would be a same-sex relationship. That's incredibly important to an investigator, because that means, as a general rule, two individuals of roughly the same age range, generally speaking, are going to come out of that house. So if you have a male subject, 46 years old, 6 feet, 185 pounds, and they're in a same-sex relationship, or we found out that their brother is staying with them for for a while because for whatever reason, we're going to know then that there might be more than one subject coming out of that house that matches that description, and you lessen the risk of following the wrong person. Understanding when and where to conduct surveillance, understanding what vehicles are there, what's registered to who's likely to drive which vehicle away from the house. Gathering of data for communal hotspots and events. So, they live in a community that their biggest event of the year is, the Strawberry Festival or whatever the case may be. Maybe they go to that. There's a high likelihood that more than X percentage of the population of their area go to this thing. It might be a good day to be out there to see if they're going to be involved in the event, even if we don't know for sure that they're gonna. And then, of course, determining manned versus unmanned surveillance. Go off on a little bit of a tangent here, just because I feel the question about to be asked about drones. So drones are useful. We do have them. We do have FAA licensed pilots for our drones. We actually have one investigator in the Midwest with a plane to be able to take high-speed photography from a plane. The problem with drones is they don't fly high enough to get out of a public purview, and if we fly them low, they're visible. So there's really not a lot of call for them in surveillance. There's a lot of use of those in scouting the area, things like that, but even more so than that on property claims. It's a lot easier to send a high definition 8K video on top of a house for hail damage than it is to put an investigator on, say, a 12 and 12 pitch where they might fall. So we do find it, to be for safety. The other thing we use it is a scene investigation. So you have a claim that was a result of an auto accident, even if it was comp. Going out to do a scene investigation of that accident, a lot of times we can get better views by using the drones, or in some cases, the only view we're going to get because an investigator can't walk out in the middle of the interstate. So we can use them for that, and they're very useful. Generally, when I'm talking about unmanned cameras, I'm talking about the kind that we stick next to a telephone pole across from the claimant's house. These are very, very upscale pieces of equipment. Pan, tilt, zoom, we can watch them live, we can watch the footage after. We can even set them up to only begin recording when they detect motion and focus them directly on the claimant's house, so that if they come out and mow their yard in a rural area, we can capture that. They do run for about 4 days before they have to be picked up. And the biggest risk that we run with those is having them stolen. They don't look like cameras. They look like junction boxes sitting beside a telephone pole where they're supposed to be. So generally speaking, nobody looks twice. But we have had them stolen before. And the box of equipment's about $4,500 that gets stolen there. So it has happened. And that's really the biggest expense in them, is worrying about them being stolen. But they can be useful in certain areas. You do have to be careful of a few things, and that is expectation of privacy, how it's set up, who owns the property, things like that. But we do all of that analysis, of course, so no one ever has to worry about it but us. But they can be useful in surveillance. So, securing validated evidence. The most important thing about gathering evidence through social media is to still perform a thorough investigation. You have to validate that evidence. One example I'll give of that is I had a client call me, say, hey, we want to do a digital investigation on this claimant. We think she's more active than she says. They were correct, she was. When we went onto social media, we found her skydiving. And while she said that the skydiving was the previous weekend, we couldn't prove it because, again, Facebook scrubs metadata. So when you upload a picture to Facebook, that metadata is no longer available on that photo. So we, performing a thorough investigation, we've got to go out there and validate it. On that particular case, what we did was scan through social media using that photo, and the skydiving company that she used had her photo posted as well. So while we still couldn't get metadata off it because it was just on their Facebook page, we found the same photo on another Facebook page telling us where she went. We were able to call them, get her signed release on the day she jumped, and without ever doing surveillance, confirm that she did in fact go skydiving, which is a direct violation of what she was able to do. So when the client first called me, they wanted to deny the claim, which is great. But let's validate it first, because what you don't want to do is deny a claim based on something you see and find out that picture was taken 6 months prior. So don't rely solely on what someone's saying online. You can say anything online. In fact, people do say outlandish things online. And remember that it is possible to subpoena for deleted info, like we talked about. And that brings up a wise quote from President Abraham Lincoln. The problem with quotes on the internet is that it's difficult to verify their authenticity. So in summary, just to leave time for for questions, typical using digital techniques wise and important. It's more cost effective than a field investigation by a third or an eighth of the cost of going out and actually doing a field investigation. Uncovers information not generally found in the field. You're going to find more information. Field investigations, don't get me wrong, have their place, obviously, but we're able to find things that you just don't generally find in the field, and it helps set that up. You document activities over a period of time. Again, it's inexpensive, so you can watch and see, and what's going to be the next time for me to do this? When should I assign surveillance? You're able to watch and listen and see when that might be a better idea. Provides evidence to corroborate or refute other information that's been given. Provide insight into behavior, and again, can be used as a precursor to surveillance. In my opinion, should always be used as a precursor to surveillance, just because it makes surveillance so much better. Unless you know, I have an active claim where they already knew that the claimant was a football player for a college right now. I didn't need to do a lot of digital digging. All I had to look up is when they're playing. So the investigator was there last weekend and got video of the claimant actually playing in a tackle football game. So it does happen. But sometimes, we need to confirm and verify data, but it is always the best idea to start there for surveillance. Non-surveillance efforts can be utilized to validate information, upfront due diligence to gather more information on a party, whether it's your claimant or a juror or whatever the case may be. Knowing more information is always better, obviously. When their employment status is in question, a lot of times we can find that without ever having to investigate further in the field. If they're uncooperative or unresponsive, if leverage is needed during mediation or litigation, you can find those things and use them. When they move or relocate to a new home or area, it's always important. When just really validating and assessing information is needed, it can be used for that. And information regarding individuals' past. People are less guarded about things that they don't feel like directly impact what's happening to them today. That is just a blurb on our departments. I'm really open for questions now. If everybody wants to kind of come back, I wanted to leave enough time so that we could discuss. But I'll leave that up there. I think that's actually the last slide. Yeah, I'll leave that up there. Just, we do digital intelligence, also field investigations, and Jennifer mentioned we're an SEU designate. We do fraud and compliance. Some clients find that, useful, some don't. And then litigation support, which is the side of the house that I'm most involved in, and that is, our pretrial intelligence.
Thank you, Terry, so much for your information. I see that Mandy has a question. Mandy, is your mic on?
Yes. Hi, Terry.
Hey.
You did get a few questions. One is, has there been any legislative actions taken around false friending?
There has not to date. There will be. I mean, it's a matter of time. There's going to be someone that a line gets crossed, they sue and they win because someone crossed a line and violated their expectation of privacy. They have a private Facebook page. It's kind of the same thing with surveillance. You think about an investigator going out on surveillance. It's not illegal to video a claimant. It's not illegal to video a claimant inside their home. It is illegal to video a claimant inside their home using artificial zoom. So if you're using a camera and you zoom in digitally to get a better shot of the claimant in their house, you violated their expectation of privacy. But you can do it from the public vantage point all day long. So it's really the same basic idea. If your Facebook page is public, I can gather anything I need to get against you. If your Facebook is private, I can only get to it through public means. If I violate those means, I've done something that hasn't been litigation yet, but eventually it will be, and you don't want to be the, Mandy versus Watchpoint. I don't want Watchpoint to be named to be anywhere involved with something like that.
Yeah. Okay. One more, admissibility on geotagging.
Admissibility, like admissibility in court?
Yes.
Okay, geotagging is guaranteed. If we're able to take a photo, and actually that leads me back to talking about something that I think I missed somewhere in there. I didn't talk about Google Images. I know it popped up at one point on the screen, but I didn't actually talk about Google Images. So there it is over to the right-hand side. We were talking about geotagging. I completely glossed this. So whoever asked that question, thank you so much for catching me missing something. So geotagging location happens every time, and it is guaranteed. It's not manipulatable. It's not something we can add or change after the fact. It is completely admissible in court if we have it. Now, again, Facebook removes it. So going back to the skydiving girl, I didn't find metadata, by the way, but I'll use it as the example regardless. So we had that photo on Facebook, which removed the geotagging data, so we didn't have it. Right. What we did was we grabbed that image and we threw it into Google Images. Google Images is useful for a couple of things. If someone's taking pictures of themselves on vacation, grab that photo and throw it into Google Images. You're probably going to have something in the background that's picked up, and Google's going to tell you where they are. So if they just have a pier in the background behind them at the beach, which is actually the example that I had down in the bottom right, which is a pier in St. Petersburg. They just took a picture with that pier in the background. You throw that, even though you can't see the geotagging location, you throw that into Google Images and it pops up where that pier is in St. Pete, so you know where they were. So we took that photo from Facebook and threw it into Google Images. We found the photo on another Facebook page for the skydiving company, which was great. It was a great stroke of luck, or as like I call it, good old-fashioned investigative know-how, aka luck, to find that picture there. But it gave us the information that we need to further validate that. Now, that could have been that we found it on a social media site that doesn't scrub that data. Then we're able to grab the photo, pull that data, and tell you exactly when and where that photo was taken. So yes, it's admissible. Most of the time, we can't get that data. I would say most of the time we can't find it, because most of those pictures are on Facebook and Instagram, and it's all been scrubbed, which again, as the father of an 18-year-old about to be 19 years old next month, I am all for scrubbing that data.
Well, Terry, we want to thank you so much for being our guest speaker, Jennifer, for joining us. Mandy, appreciate you putting this program together for our audience. Just as a reminder, you will be receiving your 1 hour CEU credit. You will be receiving your credit in 1 hour. So you will get that shortly. And if there's anything that we can do for you here at MacroPro, please let us know. We are a document retrieval company. We gather records for your claims and litigated files. And we get records not only anywhere in the United States, but we also get records worldwide. Until the next time, we will see you at the next MacroPro and Friends. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.